My name is Fred, and this is my story. I was born in Richmond in 1976, and born to young parents. My mother was 17 and my dad was 18. My recollections as a small child is my family liked to party, do drugs, drink. And that was not only my mother and father, but my immediate family as well, uncles, cousins. That was just part of the lifestyle. I can remember being young. I had an incident with a family member with child molestation, which pretty much had a profound effect on me for a long period of time. But coming up, middle school, I started to have a need to fit in, to be cool, and that's where drugs and alcohol came into the picture, probably about 8th grade. It became a prevalent part of my life. The drugs and the alcohol gave me a sense of power. They gave me a way in with girls. I felt important. By the grace of God, somehow I graduated high school. Once I got out of high school, the drugs and alcohol got worse. My father and I had a falling out my senior year. I was forced to leave the home and get an apartment, and my whole senior year pretty much is a haze. The apartment was a place for people to party, drink, do drugs, and that's about the time or the year before I started messing with heroin. For fun at first, and then my senior year it turned into like a full-blown addiction. Like I had to have it every day. I was using it, selling it, for the next 2 years after high school. Although I held down a job, my heroin addiction spiraled out of control. To a point, at that point, I was working for my father in the insurance business. I can remember him coming by one day by my apartment and sitting down talking to me. I admitted to him that I had a serious problem and was willing to get help. That was my first experience with a rehab, long-term inpatient. I got out. My father and I decided that maybe I should just go in the military, and that's what I did. I joined the Coast Guard, and that was in 1996. So I did well in the Coast Guard. I excelled. I liked the structure, and I was in search and rescue, so I felt like I was helping people. I look back at it now, I can know that I traded one addiction for another. We had bars on base with 50-cent beers, and when we got off duty, we drank. As long as you could stand up in formation the next morning, you were good to go. So the next 8 years, I became an alcoholic. I drank and did what I was asked to do. Honorably discharged, which is a miracle from God too. I got out, went to work for my father in the insurance business, and did very well. But like a lot of things, I was good at hiding stuff, and I hid my drug addiction because I'd say a week after I was honorably discharged, I started using drugs again. As I excelled in the insurance business, I was making good money. I'd saved some money in the military, had a house at this point, had my son Campbell, and my now ex-wife, and life was good. And looking from the outside in, I had everything a man could want. Had the biggest moment in my life. In 2004, my father got sick with cancer. My father and I had become close because we worked together. I can remember him coming back from the hospital telling me that he had terminal cancer, and the doctor had given him 8 to 12 weeks to live. And I remember walking out back of our office and looking at the sky and cursing God. Anyway, 8 weeks later, my father did pass. He was 47. From that moment on, as I look back, my life spiraled completely out of control. I bought a Harley Davidson, was headed down Route 17, got in an accident with another vehicle. I left the hospital with 90 Oxycontin, which is a painkiller. It wasn't 2 weeks. I was breaking those down and snorting them, and when those ran out, I went right back to the heroin. And, a couple years I was, full-blown $400 to $500 a day habit, an OD and an MCV trip, but I kept getting it. And at a point where I had pretty much lost my job, I was spending all the money that my family was making on my drug addiction. I got up one day, and my now ex-wife had left a note and taken the kids. You know, one thing I'll never forget about that letter is was one thing she said in there, that she wasn't going to watch somebody she loved so much kill themselves. And I'll always remember that. But that wasn't enough to make me stop, so I continued to use and abuse heroin. Just continued to spiral out of control. I woke up one day in the house I was living in, and I'd sold everything but the bed I was in. At that time, I went to a rehab once again. I went on my own accord. Stayed sober. I put about 1.5 years together of sobriety time, and that's the time when I met my now wife. You know, we lived together. We lived in sin, and I got a job back. Was working. You know, but something was still missing. I was never whole. You know, I was on the way to work. Got off on the Mechanicsville Turnpike. Instead of making a right to go to work, I made a left. Copped dope and got high again. I was in and out of rehabs for the next few years. You know, I wanted to quit but couldn't. There was just something missing. And at this point, Casey and I had broke up. I was still using. You know, I decided to give it another shot, another rehab. I went to the healing place. I got kicked out because I continued to try to do things my way. You know, I refused to submit to anybody or anything, and I went back with Casey and started drinking. And started taking other pills. I started to drink to where I black out. I can't remember what I did or how I acted, and usually it was anger. You'd be usually at Casey. So I got kicked out again. I had nowhere to go. This is when I started to really go from woman to woman to woman, pretty much to have a couch to sleep on, until a point where spiritually I was bankrupt, a life without soul. I don't know how else to explain it. So it got to the point where people had gotten tired of me, my own family, people I knew, and I had nowhere else to go. And I ended up on the street for a little while, sleeping in the woods. I slept in the back of Connex trailers. You know, the place I ended up was here in New Kent, and it was behind a Valero. I wasn't there long, and I'll never forget. You know, and I believe this is when I couldn't go another day without God. You know, I was ready to die, and I laid down that night with every intention to die. You know, I couldn't go on living, and I woke up the next day, and I just felt different. You know, I felt different. I can't explain it. I don't need to, but you know, it's that morning. You know, I think I really felt the depth of God's love, and I called somebody, and they took me back to the healing place. That's when things started to, you know, change for me. I started to seek other things, and you know, somebody told me, if you miss the spiritual part of the program, you miss the program. And I had a long line of consequences that caught up with me at the healing place. I had to do some jail time, you know, but I started to see God work through it all too. Things I had been running from a long time. I had to face, and I had to deal with some consequences, and I was all right with that at this time. I had a peace that I'd never had before. Went to jail, would get out, go back to the healing place. Went to jail. You know, Casey had her own issues, her own problems, and she was at a point, her breaking point. I told her that she needed to go back to Georgia, be with her family, because at this point, I was in the healing place. She was in and out of hotel rooms, both pretty much homeless. And I got a call that she was going to go to Georgia, so got her to the bus station, and she took a Greyhound to Georgia. I went back to jail. 8 months, 9 months, but had a pastor come there, Jim, and he preached a sermon, and I'll never forget it. And I went back to my cell and picked up the Bible and put it down. And you know, I found in there what I'd been searching for, you know, and that was Jesus Christ. And I can say that those who've been forgiven much love much. It's a beautiful thing that it's funny, I looked through my whole life and couldn't submit to anybody, but you know, submitting to Christ was the best thing that ever happened. I got out. The week I got out, I gave my life to Christ. So I waited a little while, and I reached out to Casey. We hadn't talked to each other at all. She was following the Lord, man. It was a blessing to hear. And I started to meditate and pray, and I loved her, and I called her and asked her to marry me, and she said yeah. So I told her I'd come down there and marry her. I went down there with every intentions of staying. She had gotten us a place to live. She got a teaching job. The Lord had blessed her. I got down there, we married, and I was on probation. And I wasn't supposed to leave the state, but I called a probation officer and asked her if there's any way I could move my probation to Georgia. And she said, oh yeah, let me check on it. And for some reason, the judge refused to move my probation. They were going to put me on unsupervised probation, which is I didn't have to report. So she said I could just go down there and live, but it never happened. They wouldn't let me go. So we were apart about 6 months, maybe a little more, waiting on all these things to transpire, and they never did. And it got to a point where I couldn't wait anymore. I asked her to come up here, and she did. It's been a blessing ever since. The Lord provided me a wife that loves the Lord too. She makes it easy. Put it in my heart to go back to the healing place. Although the healing place is a great place, they are limited on what they can share about the gospel of Jesus Christ. He agreed to let us come on Sundays and pick the guys up that are in that program, bring them, have a class with them, and then they get to go hear the gospel preached. We feed them and take them back, and it's been beautiful. Of course, my heart is always for homeless people. I know that God loves everybody. So, the word says, what you do for the least of these, you do for me. Jesus tells John the Baptist's disciples, the message is preached to the poor. And I love the word, and it's just as simple as doing what it says. It's changed my life. It's no longer about me, my selfish wants and desires, and it's about other people. The Lord has put it in my heart to go back to school, which is miraculous to me, because I didn't like school at all. But started seminary, and just want to know more about God's word. He showed up in my bones. So.